By the second half of 1944, the Luftwaffe were in dire straits. Allied bombers were dropping tons and tons of explosives on German airfields, and many strategic manufacturing locations were already reduced to ruins. Hundreds of pilots were lost every day, and with them, their precious aircraft. Trying to turn the tide, Germans decided to flood the skies with inexpensive and simple throwaway planes that could be operated by inexperienced pilots. That's how the People's Fighter was born, the Heinkel 162, also known as Salamander. In September 1944, the Luftwaffe issued a requirement for their fighter aircraft. They wanted a production fighter powered by a BMW turbojet engine, not in demand for the Me 262, and armed with 20mm or 30mm cannons. Nearly every German aircraft manufacturer expressed interest in the project, including Blohm & Voss, known for their giant Bv-238 flying boat, and industry veterans at Heinkel. Despite the fact that Blohm & Voss' submission was technically superior to other projects, it was the Heinkel entry that was eventually selected for production. The codename of their construction program was Salamander, and the aircraft itself received the name Spatz, or Sparrow. It took the team less than 90 days to produce a functioning prototype, mostly because they didn't have to start from scratch, as Heinkel had a massive head start because of their previous work on the P-1073, another light single-engine fighter. The engine was mounted atop the fuselage, just behind the cockpit. As Germany was running low on resources, the aircraft was constructed mostly from wood, with key parts held together by glue. There was simply no aluminium to spare at that point. Heck, the aircraft shipped with no bullet-resistant glass in the canopy. On the flip side, Heinkel engineers managed to equip the He-162 with two 30mm guns. In December, the Spatz took to the skies for the first time. Its first flight, with Flugkapitän Gotthold Peter at controls, was fairly successful, even though the aircraft was eventually forced to land due to some technical problems. It easily reached a speed of 840 kph. Just 4 days later, the same pilot made another flight, this time in front of various officials, but there was another structural failure, causing the plane to crash, all due to the low build quality of the prototype. None of that was considered important enough to hold up the production schedule, though the People's Fighter was going to be made no matter what. The Luftwaffe wanted to get at least 1,000 planes by the middle of spring, but in the end, manufacturers were only able to build several hundred People's Fighters, and that's counting all of its variants combined. In War Thunder, there are two models of the Spatz, the A1 and the A2. The main difference between the two is in their armaments. The former was armed with 30mm Mk108 cannons, while the latter carried 20mm MG151 cannons. In real life, the Spatz did very little to help the war effort. By the time it rolled off the factory floor, Germany had already lost the war strategically. Furthermore, due to its unorthodox engine placement and original design, the aircraft proved to be pretty difficult to fly, with many Salamanders never even making it to their bases of operations. At the same time, despite its numerous flaws, the Heinkel 162 was a very interesting design for its time, especially if you take into account the conditions under which it was developed. German engineers succeeded in creating an aircraft that was really simple to build and could carry some decent weapons. And that's without mentioning the fact that their work influenced some post-war designs. For example, The BMW engine used by the Spatz was later used as a base for the French Snecma Attar, which later powered the iconic Mirage. Have you tried flying the People's Fighter in War Thunder? Do you think it deserves its name? Please tell us in the comments below. We're really looking forward to your requests.